Hello, everyone. I'm Lynn Crimando for YogaU Online, and I am delighted to be here today with yoga and meditation teacher, psychotherapist, and Hatha somatic educator, James Knight. James is the founder of a movement exploration technique called gentle somatic yoga. Welcome, James.
Hi, thank you. It's nice to be here with you.
You coined the term integrative therapist for yourself to reflect the diversity of your many varied trainings, which include Watsu water therapy, body work, core energetics, biofeedback, and you're also on staff at a number of higher learning uh, organizations. And I think you are also one of the lecturers for Maryland University's master's program, if I'm not mistaken. Lots of varied experience, and we bring a lot of fullness of experience into our work. You certainly have a full roster of experience. What's brought you through all of those things to somatic yoga, and can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, where to start? I've always been, one of my strongest passions is consciousness and also learning about human potential and activating and creating experiences for people to really drop into themselves to see what's possible. So back in the day, like 30 years ago, I started off with massage therapy and really got to know how to touch the body, anatomy, physiology. And I was really fortunate. My very first yoga teacher was Eleanor Criswell Hanna, and she was the creator of somatic yoga. So that was my very first yoga class, was with her. And over years of taking her course, it was at college, she recognized me. She saw me. You know, sometimes you come across people where, you know, the teacher appears and the student's ready. And she said, James, you know, I really think you should consider getting your certification in Hatha somatic education. And so Thomas Hanna died. So I'm going to back up a little bit. The science behind gentle somatic yoga is Hatha somatic education. So, so when she suggested that I take the certification, he had just passed in a tragic car accident, and he had trained his first and only group to become certified as Hatha somatic educators. So that really started my path. Once I learned this important science, um, I became really interested in all the other areas. Like I had, you know, the physical body, and now then I wanted to learn about the psychology, and then I wanted to learn energy medicine, and so that became really my driving force. Was like, let's continue looking at the whole self.
You know, I want to back you up a little bit because somatic yoga is a term that I see getting tossed around a lot right now. I'm not sure how many people really understand about Thomas Hanna. Can you talk about and Eleanor? I mean, you kind of hit the mother lode with your first yoga teacher.
I know. I mean, I have chills right now as we're talking because it always touches me emotionally that I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And Thomas Hanna was a living genius. Like he was really ahead of his time. And you
Would you
know,
say he really invented the somatic? Wasn't that his life's work? To just kind of the culmination of his life's work was the whole concept of somatic expression of movement.
yeah, I can share more about that. So he was an academic, and he was a lecturer, and he was a philosopher. And so, through his career of writing books and teaching at universities, the topic that he was most interested was freedom. And he eventually came to the realization that without choices in our physical body, we're ultimately not free. And so that led him to discover Moshe Feldenkrais. At the time, Moshe Feldenkrais, are you aware of Moshe?
Of course,
Okay,
sure.
so Thomas Hanna actually brought Moshe Feldenkrais to United States for the first time. I think they did a training at Esalen in the 70s, I believe. And so Thomas Hanna arranged that training, and Thomas Hanna actually became a certified Feldenkrais practitioner for about 8 years. And then through that practice of learning Feldenkrais, he had the inspiration to, because Feldenkrais is heavily interested in the sensory cortex part of the brain. And Thomas Hanna added bringing some movements that stimulated the motor cortex, the sensory and the motor cortex. So that was Thomas Hanna's contribution. And so Thomas coined a couple of things. He took the word soma, or somatikos in Greek, which is the term for body, and he added an S, somatics. Somatics, with his definition, is experiencing the body from within. So that's one of the terms that he coined. Another term that he coined, which is a major part of the science behind gentle somatic yoga, is sensory motor amnesia. So sensory motor amnesia is where we've lost voluntary control, temporary loss of voluntary control of muscles. And so in gentle somatic yoga, I've coined somatic movement flows. So the somatic movement flows help a person switch back on and activate and strengthen the brain to muscle nervous system connection. And so we come out of sensory motor amnesia, meaning the loss, pain, postural imbalances, numbness, natural alignment, and through the flows, we reawaken and stimulate the whole self. So I call it somatic SMA, sensory motor awakening. So Thomas Hanna was the founding father of this movement by helping us understand how to do this. And so when I became certified as a Hanna somatic educator, it was a very extensive program, like 3 years. Very honored to be a part of that group. I was the third group of people. We call them waves in our tradition. The third wave of students to become certified. And that heavily influenced my career. So that was like 25 years ago.
Was that, but you did somatic, the Hanna somatic practitioner, and you were also studying yoga, somatic yoga.
Yeah. So backing up again,
Yeah,
this is
so
kind of a
putting,
spiral.
yeah,
This
I'm
is
trying
kind
to
of a
put them together
spiral
in my head.
conversations. Yeah. So let me
Yeah.
help. So at Sonoma State, where I was going to school, I met Eleanor Criswell Hanna. So she's the one that invited me to take
Yeah.
the course. So
Yeah.
she created, I'm pretty sure, because she created the method somatic yoga. So she took Hatha yoga, postures, and asanas. And because she was married to Thomas Hanna, I'm sure that they created the Institute and the Devato Institute of Research and Training. I always forget the way that the names are arranged, but there's an institute where we get trained, and she helped him create the course. So she took the science of Hanna somatic education and started blending it with traditional yoga. And so she coined it somatic yoga. She wrote a book on it. And so she became my main mentor. So yeah, so I did both. So actually, when she turned department chair at Sonoma State, she asked me, out of all of her students, to teach somatic yoga. And it was so humbling because at that point, I didn't even know about Yoga Alliance. I didn't have any other yoga teachers training behind my belt, but she just saw a potential in me, and it was really an honor. So yes, I started off with teaching somatic yoga, which is traditional Hatha yoga postures with the science of Hanna somatic education, and that's where it started.
How would a yoga class that's informed by Hanna somatics, what would that look like? How would a gentle yoga somatics class look different from a gentle yoga class?
So over the years, moving forward from 25 years ago, taking these other forms that I mentioned, like biofeedback, I studied a lot shamanism, a lot heavily meditation, Vipassana meditation. As a yoga teacher, eventually I became certified as a yoga teacher. I have a lot of experience teaching traditional yoga in classes and studios, and I actually ran 2 wellness centers. So what happened was I started exploring bringing in the movements that Thomas Hanna and Feldenkrais created and bringing a slight twist to it because of my bodywork experience and my biofeedback experience. I started experimenting, bringing the flows into a traditional yoga class. And my students it's just amazing to me, because I was a little bit nervous because they're very different. They're not static poses. We use interoception to create intuitive movements through the body. Um, the difference between traditional Hatha yoga and gentle somatic yoga is we're constantly checking in with ourselves. We're hugging our muscles in towards our body so that we're engaging the sensory motor cortex. And then the appendiculation is to slowly disengage those muscles slowly and smoothly, and then come into a resting position. So we never hold a stretch. The intention is to never stretch a muscle or a muscle group, even though we are temporarily in stretching positions. It's more important that we use mindfulness to choose an anatomical focus and to mindfully engage that muscle group so that we can sense and feel, and then we choose, that's the motor cortex, how to respond to that by slowly and smoothly releasing that muscle group and then come to full rest. So that's a definition of pendiculation, which also Thomas Hanna coined. Well, it's, appendiculation, if you look it up in a dictionary, you usually see a person yawning in the dictionary, because as we yawn, that's what we do. We temporarily engage the muscle groups of our jaws, and then we slowly release and come back to rest. So that's what I've done with gentle somatic yoga, is I've created somatic movement flows to explore and connect with different parts of our body. And through doing so, we unwind and unlock and reset, reprogram from the level of the brain, the resting length of the muscle. And that's the ultimate intention, is to unwind from the stresses of life and the sensory motor amnesia and return to this optimal length of a resting muscle.
It's clear. I've watched a lot of your videos on your various hundreds of video channels. And they're great, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I like the one, I like to call it your deconstructed cat pose, where it's got four things. None of it looks like a yogic cat pose, but it's like when they give you a deconstructed lemon meringue pie at the restaurant, and there's a little lemon foam, and then they spray.
I like where this is going.
Well, what I notice, a couple things, is that you have a really intelligent use of contract and release along a specific chain. And there's a very deliberate, methodical quality to your cues, to the way that you alert people to follow their bodies. And one of the things that I think yoga teachers struggle with a lot is helping people to create body awareness. And it seemed like that very methodical way where you just literally go one toe at a time, or go from this elbow to that knee to. Can you talk a little bit about that process? Because I know you're working on so many levels there.
Yeah, thank you for these questions. They're awesome. They're really, it's exciting to drop inside and to explain for first-time viewers or first-time people that don't know anything about this. You're asking great questions. Let me see how I can answer that. So first person experience versus third person experience, second or third person experience. I think as the mass collective, we're often orienting ourselves to the external world, and we're waiting for the feedback for our external world to help, make decisions for ourselves. So to answer your question, the movements are designed so that the student, the participant, can start to discover for themselves from the inside out. How it's very intuitive, like the instructions from gentle somatic yoga are a portal for a person to start discovering, how does that muscle move? How do the joints and bones stack? So it's really this internal feeling process. It's a process of discovery and exploration, where a person can refine parts of themselves that they may have disowned unconsciously through patterns of holding stress and tension from modern day life. Because, like it or not, our bodies are a map to our whole entire life experience, mentally, emotionally, physically. And we temporarily, like I mentioned earlier in the interview, we temporarily forget how to use our body because things, the muscles stay unconsciously contracted even in resting states due to
Yes.
a reflection of stress. So the movements, like you're referring to this cat sequence, and I've actually renamed it Restore the Core. And it does come from the tradition of Hatha somatic education, but I've refined it to 4 movements with the intention for the participant to experience most of the major muscle groups in the body in 4 movements. And they also, I don't know if we have time to explore this, I'll leave it up to you, but there's 3 main reflexes that we want to address. And a reflex is something we don't have control of. For example, I'll just name one and we'll see if you want to expand with it.
Mm-hmm.
So the red light reflex is called the startle reflex. So all human beings and animals actually, if there was a loud noise to happen right now, like something like a crash, all of us would hug our muscles in towards itself to protect our heart and our guts. It's just an instinct. It just happens automatically. Our head comes forward, our shoulders come forward, our arms come forward. Just imagine coming into a fetal position. Now so this is a reflex. It's just, we don't even think about it. So the 4 movements in Restore the Core help us unwind from those reflexes because they become a subconscious pattern. And I can see that in my clients and my students, is that we all each have a little bit of these 3 reflexes. So that is partly what we address with the somatic movement flows, particularly this one that you're talking about. But it's systematically going through the entire body and reawakening the possibility of regaining control of that muscle and then resetting it through the brain to its most optimal length in a resting position.
And none of that looks like what you're doing when you're talking about,
I
lift your
know, I
head.
know. If you're just observing from an outside person, you're like, what is that? It's like,
Well, but you get, but like the deconstructed thing, you come away and you go, I just did yoga,
yes,
right?
yeah,
I've reset things. I've got the breath
yes,
is working.
yes.
You
It's
know,
it's 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 incredible. Like every time I teach a class, it's so dramatic to watch people increase their range of motion in one class and one movement flow. You can observe or you can experience a pretty dramatic change, and that's what I love sharing with people because we didn't achieve that through stretching. It didn't come from stretching. It came from tuning inside and making choices for yourself how to move your body. So it's very empowering. It's not rigid. It's fluid. It's a fluid discovery, a fluid movement through interoception. Tuning inward and going, oh yeah, what is that? How does that work? How do I do that odd movement? But the truth is, Moshe and Thomas Hanna studied the movement of babies and animals. Because if you've ever watched a baby in a crib, they're pendiculating all the time. Their little hands and their little arms are just moving. Or if you have a cat or a dog, they get up and they come in and they extend a limb and they bring it back in. And as humans, we do it too, but we're just not aware of it. Like if we've taken a nap or we sleep, we just kind of like hug and squeeze. And so it's really quite natural to do that. So that's what the movements mirror is, this hugging in and then moving away. And it can look very strange for the first time.
but I bet it feels amazing. I just did a few of them and they felt great. So
Yeah, it's
I
it's
could just
incredible because
imagine.
as your muscles return to a natural length, then your
Uh-huh.
body just melts and we return back to our natural state, which is peace and well-being. When we strip away the layers of stress and habitual habits of holding stress, it just brings us back into homeostasis, back into parasympathetic, and we feel free. We are free, and it's immediate.
I think the other kind of point about that is people in general don't go to yoga class so they can improve their warrior two. Most people are going to yoga class because they want to feel better. They want to feel better in their bodies. They want to feel better in their lives. They want to sleep better. And so, what it sounds like what you're providing really is not uh, a set of postures that are disjointed from what it's going to mean to you personally to do this practice.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing, it's definitely a lot of times, not for every yoga class or teacher, because there's so many talented teachers out there right now. We're learning so quickly with modern science about the fascia and how the brain works, but I'm going to make a generalization. Is it a lot, typically in yoga classes, a lot of students want to like take it to the fullest expression, whatever the yoga posture is, let's go deeper, let's get better alignment, let's stack, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yoga is a science. It's been around for 6,000 years that has tremendous benefits, and it goes on and on. But we take it a step further, because what I have found out is that muscles don't really like to be stretched if the body's in pain. And with modern day yoga, again, I'm making generalizations, but it's more about fitness versus wellness. It's just, modern yoga culture. It's just, it's not like what yoga, I believe what yoga was intended to do, which is to self-heal, to self-reflect. And so yeah, it's not about, instead of saying what it isn't, I'm going to say what it is. It's trusting your own somatic intelligence to come back to natural movement. And so natural movement is going to be different from for each person, because everybody's body's not the same.
Right.
So the fluid movements are the process of unwinding from these stress patterns. Then each soma, because soma means body and mind are connected. It's up to each person how they want to move and what feels right for them. And what I love about gentle somatic yoga is it's for everybody, for every ability, every age. All the somatic movement flows can be customized, and each person can learn at their own pace. So it really is an unwinding process. And as that happens, more choices come back to the soma. And so back to Thomas Hanna's interest in freedom, ultimately that's what we get when we remove our armoring or our defense structures that sometimes we don't even know we have, but it shows up as pain and strain and postural imbalances. Then we're left with a soma that can express itself on every single level. The whole self is free when the physical body is unlocked.
Yeah, as you were talking, it occurred to me when you said people come in for fitness. I kind of thought, well, people come in because they think they want fitness, but then what they get is not fitness. But they could get fitness out of it, but it's way more rich and a fulsome experience than I developed some muscles in my arm from doing that chaturanga sequence. Yes.
Can I share something with you?
Absolutely.
I just spent the month in South Korea. It was really an honor to be invited by a yoga studio there, because they found gentle somatic yoga. One of their teachers took my online teacher's training certification. And the owner of the studio, it was a teacher from the studio. The owner of the studio had to translate in English the somatic movement flows. And they reached out to me, long story short, and they said, we really think you're onto something. Would you mind coming and being our guest and would you like to co-create a new method of yoga, gentle yoga? We think that you have some pieces that could really be valuable. And I'm like, wow, yeah, I would love to go to Asia. I've never been to Asia. I travel around the world, but I haven't been to Asia. So I was shocked because I taught several classes, 2 classes a week, and I saw private clients. What I found interesting was the group was big. The classes were like 50 people. And the common theme was pain. Most of the yoga teachers, because mostly yoga teachers, live with pain as normal. It was normal. And I was just, I don't know. I kind of live in not a magic bubble, but I live in a bubble. I'm free in my body of pain. And, so it was just kind of like an awakening that pain is normal. Like, I'm still processing it right now, and so through doing the flows, they realized, wait a minute, I don't have to be in pain. I don't have to accept what normal people say, the aging process. And the truth is, no, we don't.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question. Back to fitness, is I think that if there's pain, then sometimes we have this mentality, just keep pushing, eventually we'll get there. Bad back knee, shoulders, let's keep practicing. But it's still like, it's, I don't know if are you tracking what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm actually tracking what you're saying, and it's reminding me of people who say, like, when I do this particular pose, it hurts so much. How can I do it? And maybe the answer is you shouldn't be doing that pose. Like, rethink the whole thing. Should you be doing that? Is that a help? Why are you here? I think it just what you're talking about goes to, why are you sitting? Why are you in this studio? Are you in
Yeah.
the studio to perfect a shopping list of shapes? Or are
Oh,
you in this studio to, what, as I described it, is to better inhabit your body and to live
nice.
your life in your body,
Beautiful.
which is what it sounds like you're talking about, really, very much.
Well, yeah, because pain, if it's muscular pain, I know now through doing this for 30 years, if it's muscular pain, it's sensory motor amnesia. The brain has just temporarily forgotten how to control that muscle group. So you can fight it all you want and stretch it all you want, but if the sensory motor cortex is not engaged, it will stay painful. And what did I want to say about that with the fitness? It's like, so when you learn how to regain control of the muscles, then you just naturally return back to an open state.
Yeah.
So it's more about wellness at that point. It's not about struggling or pushing past pain or strain ever. That's not a loving act to begin with. It's quite barbaric if you think about it. But it's something that we've been conditioned as a culture, I think. And again, I'm making mass generalizations. It's shifting now. I think the whole yoga world is shifting. But in general somatic yoga, we take advantage. Pain has a purpose. Pain is actually one of our best friends, like the breath. Pain is showing us where somewhere along in our life we've disowned that part of ourself. The pain is coming from a signal that we're out of balance. So in general somatic yoga, instead of going away from pain, we're actually going to move into it through a pendiculation gently, and we move towards ourself. And then we slowly come out. And that's, again, part of the science of triggering the sensory motor cortex. So it's almost at the beginning when yoga teachers find this work, it's so non-intuitive. Like when I went to Korea, the students were like, "What? Don't stretch?" Like we think if we have a pain, well then let's open it right away, right? And in general somatic yoga, we don't do that. We actually, if we find areas in our body that feel painful, then we say, "Thank you, body," and we move into it. It's almost like we kiss it, like we hug it, like a child that's crying. We're just going to say hello to that part of our body, and in a very gentle way, we're just going to start unwinding that way. So that's again answering your question, the difference between traditional yoga and general somatic yoga.
I feel like there will be people who listen to this who will be mad at me if I don't ask you about the other reflexes.
Oh, okay. Sure, I'd be
Because
happy
you said
to.
you would.
Yes, and no problem. And in our webinar, I'm actually going to be giving PDF handouts that list these with details. So
All right, so we're going to talk about that in a second, but
okay.
let's do this and then we'll do that.
Sure.
Okay.
So the startle reflex, okay, so even animals do this. If you've ever seen animals hunting, once they're in that sympathetic state, they're on high alert. They actually crouch down close to the earth before they hunt. So the startle reflex, we talked about that. It's more of a fear response, but it's really literally to protect the front of our body. The green light reflex, I wish I could stand up right now. I can turn to the side, I suppose. So the red light reflex is more like this. Okay, the green light reflex is like a call to action. It's where the back muscles engage, and it's, imagine a soldier standing at attention, right? There's this posturing of the shoulders go back, the chest is lifted, the lower back is arched, and it's like a bow and arrow. We're ready to go. We're ready to move forward. And a lot of us that are A-type personalities and overachievers, we have the green light reflex because we're ready to do the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And you can see this in postures. If you're ever in an area like standing in line for a movie, you can see these these reflexes. Yeah. So the green light is a call to attention. It's ready to act. And a lot of people that have lower back pain have the green light reflex. So it's a cue for yoga teachers and body workers to see this because the back muscles are tight. The trauma reflex, the third one, um, is usually involves a tilt and a torque. And it usually means that one side of the body is more contracted than the other. And it can come from various things. It can come from surgeries. Well, think of it if like I broke my arm at one point when I was younger, and they put me into a cast. And I don't know if this has happened to you or a viewer. When they take off the cast, the arm doesn't know how to go back down right away. It's still close to the body. Like, because when we're in pain, it's a reflex to protect to protect ourselves. So the muscles stay frozen temporarily, sensory motor amnesia. And this side of, I'm using an analogy of my right arm, this side of the body becomes tighter than the other side. And so that creates more of a tilt or a torque. Other examples are sport players like golfers, baseball players, tennis players, using the same muscles over and over again. Those muscles on that side of the body are going to be tighter. Another example, a lot of mothers, especially if they have more than one child, or grandfathers, they usually we have a habit of picking them up with one arm, because especially mothers, when they're multitasking, baby's in one arm, the other hand is doing something else. So let's just say that I'm picking up baby with left arm. Then over time, these muscles on my left side of the body are going to be more contracted than the right. Accidents, whiplash, car accidents, that's just part of modern day life. Some people get into car accidents and there's this whipping motion or a rocking motion. So all of these things can create imbalances with just one side of the body. Mm-hmm. Trauma reflex. It usually comes from some kind of trauma. I'm giving you brief summaries.
Okay, well, that's great. But you do have a course coming up where you're going to go into more detail about all of this, called Creating Embodiment Through Somatic Awakening. Is that right?
Yes, May 7th and 9th.
Did I guess correctly? Although it's on my notes.
yes, May 7th and 9th. And what's so great about it is I'm doing, for me, it's exciting because I'll be giving a half an hour lecture on May 7th and May 9th, and then a half an hour practice if people choose. They can take the practices later as well. But it's really important for people to embody this. We can talk about it, we can think about it, but the truth is, with general somatic yoga, it's that interoception. It's coming inside and making generative choices for ourselves, learning how to make generative choices for ourselves. And then there's a full 1 hour movement practice as a bonus.
Where you put it all together?
Put it all together, yeah.
So who should take that course? Is it for yoga teachers? Is it for anybody who has a body? Is it for
anybody
students?
who wants to be free? I have 13-year-old professional surfers that I work with. I have 91-year-old clients who had a hip replacement. So I think with this demographic, with YogaU Online, I'm expecting there'll be a lot of yoga teachers that will be taking this webinar because you can learn the somatic movement flows. And just like I did when I developed it, you can immediately apply these flows into a traditional yoga class, whether you're a yoga therapist, whether you're a yin yoga teacher, Hatha yoga, Vinyasa, Ashtanga, it doesn't matter. You can incorporate them because if anything, if you can unwind your body a little bit and increase your range of motion 25% in one movement, then come into a yoga asana, you're just going to experience yourself in a whole different way, a safer way. So I'm expecting that will be the largest part of the demographic, but certainly not limited to, the lay person who wants to learn more about themselves, take control of learning how to bring a greater awareness of self. It definitely busts the myth of aging. When I first started this method, I really attracted the senior population, the active senior population, because most people think you just age and you just accept these postural imbalances. The head forward and the kind of the shuffle. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that the older generations, 50 plus, 50, 60, 70. They can modify, all the somatic movement flows can be modified. So I hope that some of that demographic will take it.
I think the other thing that really would be beneficial is the fact that you're not dealing in structure, a picture of this is what it's supposed to look like. You're really dealing in get into your body, find this connection, and see what happens when you connect those dots.
You have tuned in so well. I really appreciate our connection right now talking about this. You're absolutely right. And you used a word earlier about body shapes.
Yeah.
I love using this term. Like, it was very, very intuitive that you said that for me, because it's true. It's each soma is going to discover their own shapes. Like, the guidelines through the flows are to explore that, but then there is this intuitive invitation at that point then to make it your own. You know, your body, your somatic intelligence will take over, and it'll be like, ooh, that feels good. The practice feels, it's meant to feel good.
Yeah.
You're meant to feel pleasure, so definitely each person will express slightly different. Like, I don't want them to look like me, and I don't want them to look like their neighbor.
Yeah.
It's each person will go into it and go, wait a minute, what is this? Oh, wow. There's just this process of awakening.
Well, James, I feel better just talking to you about it. So I can't wait to see what you
Oh,
do in the course.
thank you so
And thank
much.
you so much for talking to me today. Everyone who's tuning in, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Take James's course. It looks really good.
Oh, it was a pleasure
It was a
to
pleasure.
be with you
Namaste.
today.
Namaste,
Namaste.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.